Hello, Jean-Marc. Sabatier.
I can't hear you at all now.
Can't you hear me? There, yes.
Hello?
Jean-Marc.
Hello, François. You?
Welcome back among us. Yes, I saw that you made several appearances on different media. And today, we're going to discuss, well, three topics that are currently relevant and on which you need to speak. So we said we would talk about the antivirus, Ebola, and then finally Excal. Yes. So, are you okay with us reviewing these three topics? All right. Yes, yes.
There you go. So,
The antivirus, they came up with that. So what we need to see is the entirety. So obviously, if we mention certain interactions, or at least certain elements that interact with each other, we're suspected of conspiracy. It's kind of the curse, that makes us lose our credibility if they put this curse in front of us. So, Jean, Jean-Marc, on one hand, you speak on your own behalf, and and well, I would like you to respond to this attack that is often made against us when we want to discuss connections between different elements. Uh, what? You respond to this conspiracy attack? You want?
to say regarding the appearance of viruses?
Well, what I mean is that, when I listen to you through certain media and you mention that vaccines anticipated pandemics that appear 3 months later or a year later. Yes, yes.
We agree, right?
So, yes, yes. Why do we act like fools and pretend not to, not to notice it? But if we do notice it, we can ignore the link between the creation of a virus and this virus that appears. Why it appears? How does it appear like that? And then afterwards, we offer the antivirus, sort of. That is, yes, exactly.
We offer the mRNA vaccine as well.
So we'll start with Ebola. We'll start with the antivirus. Yes.
Well, indeed, the antivirus, which we've been talking about for a few weeks now, actually, there's a vaccine ready since 2024, mRNA from Moderna, specifically against the strains of antivirus viruses. So the antiviruses, actually, there are two main families of antiviruses. There is a family, that is responsible, for cardiopulmonary disorders, so which is more severe than the other strain. It's an Andes strain, for example, found in France, but originally an American strain, so with severe pulmonary effects, severe. And then there are strains found more in Asia and Europe normally, although we find Andes in France, which is actually an American strain, which are more viruses responsible for hemorrhagic fever. So for the listeners, actually, antiviruses are also enveloped viruses like SARS-CoV-2, but unlike it, they have segmented RNA with negative polarity. So segmented, that means that the RNA, the genetic information of the virus, is carried by three strands. So basically, on the surface of the envelope, there is a heterotetramer made up of two glycoproteins from different envelopes, one called GN, one called GC, which assemble into a heterotetramer. And then under the membrane, there are three RNAs. An RNA that is short, called ARNS, which codes for the nucleocapsid. There is a medium-sized RNA called RNAM, which codes for the two envelope glycoproteins GN and GC of the antivirus. And then there is a longer RNA called L, which will code for an RNA-dependent RNA polymerase. And the action of this enzyme is essential because It's a DNA virus, a single-stranded RNA virus, specifically of negative polarity. That means it cannot be directly translated into protein. First, there must be a complementary copy made of this RNA so that this complementary copy can be translated because it will be of positive polarity. There you go. So what's quite surprising is that the strain that emerged, especially in France, is the Andes strain. It's a virus that's a bit larger than SARS-CoV-2. It's about 120 nanometers. SARS-CoV-2 measures between 60 and 80 nanometers. So it's very difficult to transmit to humans. There are actually two major strains that can be transmitted to humans, but very difficultly. There's the Andes strain, and then there's the other strain called sin nombre. Otherwise, it transmits very difficultly via aerosol through rodents. So you really have to be in contact with the feces, urine, and saliva of rodents for it to pass to humans. These are not normal conditions.
Alors, so, the vaccine you're talking about, made by Moderna in 2024, is supposed to vaccinate against which strain of hantavirus? So,
Against the Andes strain, Andes, which is the current strain, the one found in France. Why?
so why? Yes, but why? They're going to create a vaccine for the Andes strain. So you say it's difficult to transmit between humans. Difficult to transmit.
Actually, it's very simple. This virus, it targets two major types of receptors. It targets the most pathogenic ones, the pathogenic hantaviruses, which are responsible for cardiopulmonary disorders, while others cause hemorrhagic fever with renal involvement. The targets for the most pathogenic ones are a receptor called protocodarin 1, which is involved in all coagulation processes. So it affects hemostasis. And then these viruses also affect a family of receptors called beta-3 integrins, especially in vascular endothelial cells as they attack the vascular endothelium, but not only that. So there's another receptor called alpha V beta 3, which is found on endothelial cells and blood platelets. It also targets another receptor called alpha 2 beta 3. So these are the major families of receptors that are attacked. Alpha V beta 3. So alpha V, beta 3, alpha 2B, beta 3, and then protocadarins 1. There you go. So what's really surprising is that Moderna developed, well, yes, in 2024, an mRNA vaccine against hantaviruses, which are difficult to transmit.
Which are difficult to transmit.
Yes, very difficultly. It's not really possible to create a pandemic with this type of virus because it transmits very difficultly. You can make gains of function, but it's very difficult to do so with this type of virus, meaning to tweak the virus to make it infectious. It's not possible. Yes, the key is in the car. Sorry, that's my son who wants to take the car. So there you go. Oh, yes, okay. There you go.
So where was I?
So, well, we were saying.
Actually, if there was a gain of function, we could understand the strategy, meaning you develop A. Well, yes, you see.
It's difficult to make a gain of function on hantaviruses. Why? Because they are segmented viruses. The fact that there's a heterotetramer with two glycoproteins, GN, and two glycoproteins, GC, on the surface means there must be processing, maturation of envelope glycoproteins, very precise maturation, and very precise glycosylation and post-translational modifications at the Golgi apparatus for proper assembly. Then there must also be a proper reassortment of RNAs because there are 3 different RNAs to form a functional viral particle. That means a lot of things need to be addressed for it to work. You should know that in vitro, it's a virus that doesn't grow easily. so it's very difficult to work with. However, there is always a possibility to achieve gain of function from pseudoviruses. Pseudoviruses can be created by using another virus as a support, for example, the VSV virus, vesicular stomatitis virus, or an antivirus, for example, from the HIV family, the human immunodeficiency virus, and actually inserting plasmids that will code for elements, such as the envelope glycoproteins of the hantavirus. So that's always something that is possible with pseudoviruses. And there are pseudoviruses of the hantavirus that have been created both from the antivirus and the VSV virus. There you go. So
But what can we currently say about the hantavirus phenomenon? Do you think we should move on, that it's a closed case, or that it remains something to monitor? Well, let's say,
when they started talking about the hantavirus, I was cautious because I thought, well, if it doesn't spread, it's the natural virus because it doesn't have a tendency to spread. If it spreads as a pandemic, it means it has been tampered with, that it might be a pseudovirus or something like that. So now we talk about it less. There you go.
Do you currently know where we stand? Because I haven't been following. Do you currently know if there are any cases in Europe? Is there? Do you have any information about the development of this?
To my knowledge, there are a few contact cases, but let's say it hasn't really taken off. That is to say, in my opinion, the hantavirus is somewhat sidelined for now. Now it has been replaced by the Ebola virus. It's worth noting that these are two viral infections that emerged just before the meeting in Geneva. I think it was on May 23rd, where the idea was to give the WHO free rein to manage global epidemics. There is a form
of synchronicity, one might say, between certain political decisions or movements and the emergence of these so-called false pandemics. Because for now, we can't talk about a pandemic. So for Ebola, since we're transitioning, where do we stand with Ebola? Because it's in Congo now.
Regarding Ebola, what's interesting to know is that at the beginning of 2026, just a few months ago, the foundation led by Bill Gates donated $26.7 million to Moderna to develop a vaccine against the Ebola virus. Against the strain? Against a
strain? Yes, against a very specific strain. Very specific.
The Bundibugyo, which is one of the 4 major strains of Ebola, and coincidentally is the strain that is currently spreading, which right now in Democratic Republic of Congo, which is now starting to spread in Uganda. And then it's being talked about quite a bit in Cameroon, where they have also taken action to prevent infections. So it's quite surprising. So the University of Oxford has also been funded, but it was still to the tune of $26.7 million a few months ago. And the strain? Because normally the
strain. There was already a vaccine against Ebola. Is it another strain? Is it another strain?
Yes, there is indeed a vaccine against the strain. The strain, which is actually the classic one. Yes, it was a classic strain, which, by the way, is the most dangerous, the most lethal, RDBO. There were problems with this strain because that they had during the previous epidemic, they vaccinated during the epidemic, and there were a lot of deaths due to viral overloads because it was a vaccine with a virus, a live attenuated virus, attenuated live. And so it caused an overload in people who had received the vaccines and were incubating the virus. And there was a lot of mortality. It was Geert van den Bosch who was responsible for the Ebola vaccination for Gavi at the time. So in this case, we're not dealing with that. So
the strain that appeared, can you remind me of the name? There have been some for a while, since 1976.
So there have been quite a few.
But the famous strain, The current famous strain developing in Congo, what's it called? Can you say its name again? It's Bundibugyo.
Bundibugyo. Bundibugyo. It's one of the 4 major strains, but the RBBO vaccine is supposed to be inactive against this strain.
So what solutions do we have to treat this strain?
What you need to know is that the Ebola virus, it belongs to the Filoviridae family. So it's a different family of viruses, and it's the Ebola virus genus. So it's a different virus. In fact, it's a virus that looks like a filament. In fact, the diameter of the filament is about 80 nanometers, and if it's very long, it can be several micrometers. So what's interesting is that it's also an enveloped virus with negative polarity RNA. But unlike the antivirus, it doesn't have segmented RNA, meaning it has a long RNA filament also with negative polarity. Negative. So it's a long RNA filament, ultimately. So in terms of infection, it acts very, very differently, meaning it recognizes vascular endothelial cells because it's responsible for a very, very, very severe hemorrhagic fever with a mortality rate that can be very high. Here, it's around 20 to 45% with this strain, which is not the most lethal.
Okay.
The most lethal is the Zaire strain, where lethality can reach up to 90%.
Ah oui.
De létalité, hein? Oui, oui.
Ah oui.
But generally, it's around 50%, 40 to 50%. But it really depends on the strains. So, in fact, on the cells, so these are the cells, vascular, but not only. For the antivirus, it's also a vascular endothelium, but it also attacks lung cells, it attacks kidney cells. Of course, that's why there are lung and kidney damages. So there are also damages with the antivirus to innate immunity cells, notably dendritic cells and macrophages. So here, the filovirus, when it attacks the Ebola virus, human cells, it recognizes factors present on the surface of human cells. There are several. There's one called TIM1, one called AXL. It also recognizes lectins. It also recognizes integrins. And then it also recognizes a receptor called DC sign found on dendritic cells. So regarding integrins, what's interesting is that it strongly recognizes 2 membrane integrins. So it's a membrane receptor. It's a heterodimer with an alpha and beta subunit. It recognizes an integrin called alpha-3 beta-1 and an integrin called alpha-5 beta-1. And coincidentally, these are 2 integrins recognized by the spike protein of SARS-CoV-2. And when the spike protein of SARS-CoV-2 recognizes these membrane integrins, it activates a caspase system that leads to cell apoptosis, meaning programmed cell death. So what's interesting is that through these receptors, there's a surface interaction with these different types of receptors. So C sign, XL, lectins, and integrins TIM1 as well. At that point, there's a penetration of the virus by endocytosis or by micropinocytosis. And so it enters a kind of vesicle, which is an endosome. And at that point, the endosome is acidified. And when it's acidified, this endosome activates cathepsins, which are enzymes. And particularly, Ebola activates a cathepsin called B and or a cathepsin called L. And it will cleave the envelope glycoprotein of precisely the Ebola virus called GP. And so once this GP is cleaved, at that point, it will be able to recognize a receptor on the endosome called Niemann-Pick C1. And it's from this interaction that it will infect the cell with significant lethality. So the thing is, the incubation period is short with the Ebola virus. The incubation period in humans is generally between 2 and 21 days, which makes it quite easy to contain an Ebola epidemic. Indeed. Okay, because
there are no asymptomatic cases, right? No.
Transmission occurs through contact with fluids. Is there? So there's no sweating. So it causes capillary leaks, meaning it causes hypotension. There are capillary leaks. There are plasma leaks from blood capillaries, which are the smallest blood vessels. So there are plasma leaks also of
It's impressive. It's impressive.
which causes us to have low blood pressure. Yes, 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 yes.
Are there any medications for that to treat it?
Well, yes, including for the hantavirus. Well, there are several medications. It's very likely that ivermectin works both on the hantavirus and also on the Ebola virus. Well, there are also chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine, which are described as working on the hantavirus and, in any case, in vitro at high concentrations also on the Ebola virus. And then for Ebola, there are also monoclonal antibodies that can be neutralizing. There you go. So it's somewhat logical that chloroquine or hydroxychloroquine could work on these viruses. Why? Because in fact, they go through the formation of endosomes, meaning the viruses enter the cell in the form of endosomes. Chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine are mildly basic substances that can spread into intracellular organelles and therefore raise the pH of endosomes or lysosomes. And at that point, it prevents the acidification of the endosome and thus prevents the release of the virus inside the cell, in the cellular cytoplasm, where it can actually multiply.
And currently, in Africa, do you know if they are using these medications or not? Do you have any information about that? About how they are used?
No, I don't have any specific information.
Because if it happened, could a virus like this, Ebola virus, with this particular thing, do you think it could happen in Europe through people who might be sick and arrive in Europe? Could they catch it, transmit it? Because it all depends on how it's managed, right?
Meaning if the virus is spread around a bit. So it can happen. If we see people spreading it, yes, but normally it can be contained very easily. Okay? And we see it because it dates back to 1976 after all. There have been quite a few epidemics in the DRC. Well, the mortality rate, so far it's in the range of a few hundred. I think we're at a little over 240. It's not huge.
So it's not
And if it happened, it's not
huge. If it happened in France or in Europe, it would be suspicious. Actually, it wouldn't be logical. It wouldn't be coherent.
Yes, well, it's not logical because it has always been contained, actually. It's exactly.
And why then? Why are we being told about this virus? Why is the WHO alerting the entire world population, I would say, about this danger? If we consider it to be easily yes, well, it's because they want to vaccinate too, right?
That's it. The WHO, well, its main goal is to vaccinate, right? The main funder of the WHO is Bill Gates, right? And so he has interests in vaccinations, right? So there could be a connection.
There could be a connection. If we were being Machiavellian and conspiratorial, we could imagine there's a link.
We can be in this period. In this period, there are so many oddities that...
So there could be a link. There could be a connection between the spread of this virus, I would say, in Western countries, in Europe, and the recommendation of the vaccine. Because chloroquine and the elements you mentioned, I think in France, there's no possibility to use ivermectin, chloroquine, ivermectin. We don't have the possibility to use these medications currently. Yes, it's difficult. Yes.
It's difficult. We've seen it clearly in the context of SARS-CoV-2, of COVID, because it's... So we'll face the same diff. There you go.
So we'll face the same difficulty in obtaining this type of medication if it happens in Europe, if it happens in France. Yes. So there is. So, as always, you recommend strengthening the immune system through various means.
Oh yes, that in any case, no matter the virus, no matter the microbe even, vitamin D, whether it's a bacteria, a parasite, a fungus, anything, it's clear that it will be very beneficial in all cases. That will be protective in all cases. That's it.
We go back to all these elements you've already mentioned to strengthen the immune system, of course. So, what could we say as a conclusion? What do? We observe and wait then. Yes. We shouldn't panic, right?
I think there are still people who are ready to jump on the first vaccine that comes along.
And in that case, if there were this system of, well, if there was this virus that would be spreading here, the transmission only happens through, how should I say? It doesn't happen through the air, it's not. It's a transmission that happens through contact, right?
Yes, it's mainly through contact. It's contact with fluids, biological fluids. Biological fluids.
Which means the mask won't be of any use.
Well, you still have to be cautious about aerosol transmission when very close. Very, very close. But usually, it's through contact, yes. Okay, it's mainly through contact.
There could be a reappearance. It's going to not be a reappearance of guidelines like we had with masks, distancing. All that then? No.
No, there's no reason. It should. Be contained very quickly, if only through ring vaccination, meaning a person, for example, who is infected with Ebola, will only vaccinate the contacts or close individuals. Is it?
The mRNA vaccine you mentioned, which was made earlier this year, is it currently marketable? At that point,
It's not approved. But, well, we know how it goes, meaning that it goes fast.
Yes, that's right.
Very, very fast. It's enough that, the WHO has already declared global danger, etc. So the authorizations. Given that the authorizations from the EMA, from the ANSM, well, they come very quickly. Basically, now that they don't do any safety checks, they just rely on the manufacturer's data. So we saw what happened with COVID without marketing authorization. There were emergency authorizations leading to mass vaccinations, even though there were no safety tests behind them. There's not even real control of the vaccine injections. So it's certain that it can hit the market very, very quickly.
Is this vaccine self-amplifying or not? I have no idea.
Anything, because they haven't described it. There you go. They haven't provided the formula, but, well, it would be quite possible because and this vaccine,
Would it also be marketed in the United States? Well, I think, yes, everywhere.
Yes. Well, in the United States, it might be more delicate with Kennedy over there, who doesn't really like mRNA vaccines, quote unquote. So I think he would already have even more difficulties. He would have.
More difficulties, yes.
Yes, because we agree
that in the United States, there's a more established, more virulent, and more publicized anti-mRNA movement than here in Europe. That's for sure.
Well, in Europe, it's not publicized at all. In Europe, there's censorship at that level. They push for mRNA vaccination, which isn't the case in the United States, at least for now, as long as Kennedy is in charge of health. There you go. Now we're going to talk of...
Yes. Well, I think we've said what needed to be said. Now, we're going to discuss, it was the subject of the last chapter, these famous ticks that carry this. So what is it? Is it not a virus, ex-gal?
It's ticks, but specifically it's a species of tick called Lone Star, which can transmit the ex-gal syndrome. So for the listeners, actually the syndrome, ex-gal, it actually causes an allergy to red meat. So you should know that Bill Gates, well, it's always the same story. He invested $7.6 million in a company that produces ticks, just like he also invested in a company that makes, let's say, tinkered with mosquitoes. There you go. So what you need to know is that in mammals, we have a disaccharide, which is a sugar called galactose alpha 1,3 galactose. So great primates, don't have this sugar, and humans don't have this sugar. That's important. However, it's a sugar that is found in mammals. So we no longer have this sugar. Humans no longer have this sugar precisely because we lost a gene that coded for alpha 1,3 galactosyl transferase, which is an enzyme that allows the formation of this disaccharide that is galactosyl alpha 1,3. or galactose alpha 1, 3 galactose. So we are no longer able to produce this sugar. And so when we come into contact with this sugar, we consider it foreign. And in some cases, we produce IgE, immunoglobulin E, which are responsible for allergies. That means when a tick actually bites us, for example, a lone star tick, which spits saliva, blood, etc., well, it can pass on xgal to us, which is the abbreviation for this disaccharide. And so we can produce IgE antibodies against this disaccharide, and it makes us allergic to this disaccharide found in meat, in red meat, since mammals, in fact, except for great primates, great apes, and humans, have this sugar.
Still, it's quite something.
So when we actually eat it,
This story is incredible. At first, I thought it was a joke. I had a hard time believing it.
yes. Well, when we eat this red meat, between 3 and 8 hours later, we have the allergy. So it can be treated by taking antihistamines, for example, precisely, which help neutralize this allergy. But anyway, it seems that Bill Gates is also pushing to modify ticks. Precisely so that it infects more easily and transmits the X-gal syndrome more easily, making people allergic to red meat, so they end up consuming. The synthetic meat he proposes, well, which wouldn't have this disaccharide. So the meat, and we could eat without having an allergy to red meat.
So imagine the conspiracy here, too, because we're talking about a conspiracy with Bill Gates, again, the villain.
That is, we talk a lot about conspiracy theorists, conspiracy theories, etc. But, well, in hindsight, we have to see that from the beginning, the conspiracy theorists were right, because with everything coming out, we see that finally everything that was said that seemed crazy is actually real.
In fact, they want to direct. They want to direct people's consumption. They want to direct it by integrating this type of it's not a virus, but a kind of viral anomaly. I don't know what we can call it. It's a, what is it? What is this? How can we call it in everyday language? It's not a virus. What do we call what causes the allergy in everyday language? It's a sugar.
It's a disaccharide. Yes, a disaccharide.
Yes, but we don't know this expression. It's galactose alpha 3 galactose.
So it's a sugar.
In fact, it's a sugar. Okay. That.
There you go. We can't produce it anymore because we've lost the gene, a key gene. So the alpha 3 galactose, which is the transferase that allows from galactose to precisely produce this disaccharide. There you go.
And do you believe this story about Bill Gates spreading this in certain farms?
Because I've seen this going around, but that's what we see. Yes, there's a resurgence.
I don't know what credibility we should give to this. I don't know.
In any case, yes, it's circulating on social media. There are many videos on this subject precisely where by helicopter, well, they send boxes full of ticks into the fields. So it seems a little crazy, but well, since it's a bit of a crazy time too, we can consider anything. Anyway, what is certain is that he invested in a company that produces ticks. That's for sure. He invested $7.6 million, yes. And what is also certain is that he invested $26.7 million at Oxford University and with Moderna to produce. Precisely. So yes. And the production, we
agree that he is also the one who makes synthetic meat. This meat.
Yes, he's the one who makes synthetic meat, yes. He's involved in everything. I would say that somehow he's involved in all the dodgy deals, meaning he's involved in all the deals, all the vaccines, the tests. So the geoengineering, but the meat.
The meat. Wait, I don't have synthetic meat is from strains that we make synthetic meat. Is that it? Because I've seen that we can make fish like meat. Well, we can do a lot of things with it. Yes.
Yes, we can give particular flavors.
And so this artificial meat, obviously, if we develop it, what effect would this diet have on the human body?
In my opinion, it wouldn't be great. Afterwards, we have to see what they put in it, but in any case, it would certainly not be great. It's not desirable.
It's not desirable. And so, but still, They will sell this meat claiming it's better for health, I imagine.
Yes, yes, of course. Yes, yes. Just like they sold us the mRNA vaccines that were supposed to be effective, that were supposed to protect against infection, transmission, then we see what happens. Still,
So, at that point, we could very well consider a coherence between culling herds, reducing agricultural operations with this production that is apparently ready, if I understood correctly.
yes, yes, absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, because as a reminder, on May 22nd, 2023, there was a report from the Court of Auditors requesting a reduction of the French livestock because we had 18 million cattle and it called for a 39% reduction by 2035. So,
They can very well justify it in relation to climate change and pollution. They can easily justify it.
yes, the carbon footprint, they can very well justify that culling is necessary. The herds need to be culled. And so, as soon as right away, there is a cow with tuberculosis or with nodular dermatitis, culling is carried out, even including for
And we direct consumption. Yes. That's it. Yes.
it will promote the consumption of artificial meat. That's it.
Okay. Well, listen. Thank you, Jean-Marc, for all these explanations. Thank you, François.
And thank you to the listeners. And
Then I hope people will be interested, intrigued. I I want to clarify and ask you the question, because there may be people who challenge your analyses and your. What? Your analyses and your scientific observations. Yes. Are you open to contradiction?
oh, yes, yes, there's no problem.
Yes, Jean-Marc. We were cut off by Zoom because we went beyond the time allotted to us. So, to wrap up and conclude this interview, I'd like to know if you have a particular message to address to the listeners about the three elements we've discussed. Do you have anything to say to the listeners regarding these threats that are making everyone a bit uneasy?
Yes, yes. Well, I would say we shouldn't panic too much, because we see all sorts of microbes coming out one after the other. I mean, we shouldn't panic too much, We must keep in mind that there are vaccine manufacturers who also want to sell vaccines. So, I mean, everything is often exaggerated precisely to carry out mass vaccinations.
There you go.
Since they've invested in many vaccine production plants, especially for mRNA vaccines, and it has to keep running, you have to keep in mind that the WHO is no longer the second mother it used to be. That is to say,
Yeah.
you have to be able to analyze this with a cool head and realize the manipulations, because there's a lot of censorship, a lot of manipulation. So you shouldn't panic too much. And you also need to be aware of the manipulations happening, especially in the health sector.
Yes. Otherwise, there's a battle in the United States concerning mRNA, which has been your main focus. You've been talking about this technology for a long time with the effects, side effects. Where do we stand in France in terms of opposition? Do you have any partners? Do you have colleagues? Do you feel supported in any way to continue this fight or not?
Supported not particularly, at least not by the scientific aspects. Let's say no. No, clearly no. I'm not supported. I'm marginalized. Clearly, there you go.
What do you think we should?
I don't like it when people speak badly about vaccines.
Yeah. What would be your strategy to further your message and your point? What could be done to achieve some collaboration with other scientists? In any case, to attract other scientists to this field of opposition, or at least to start a discussion about this technology. What could we do here to provoke that?
Well, the problem is that there are sanctions. It's very frowned upon. That is to say, a scientist who speaks about the dangers of mRNA vaccines will be marginalized immediately, you know.
That's right, immediately.
So in terms of promotion, don't count on it. So people are aware that they are putting themselves, in a tough spot all by themselves, you know, because
Yeah, that's it.
there's a lot of censorship. There are sanctions that go along with it. There you go. So that's how they maintain the system too, you know.
Yeah.
It's through censorship. And then the sanctions for those who hold a discourse that doesn't please the authorities, that doesn't align with the authorities. For the authorities, it's vaccination at all costs. They want to vaccinate against anything, which is madness in terms of health. It's completely ridiculous, you know. It's nonsense, especially with this mRNA technology, which is not at all ready. I think it's important for people to wake up now because we've already gone too far.
You have a part of the population that is obviously aware of this, those who frequent alternative social networks. But you have the vast majority of the population who have never heard of mRNA. I've noticed it when visiting friends and all that. They don't even know, they don't hear about it because they only follow mainstream media.
Yes.
And so we can't reach these people for now. In any case, we can't provide them with the information to provoke awareness or questioning, you see? That's the problem.
Yes. Well, because they believe the mainstream media, you know, which spreads misinformation. They are the ones who truly spread scientific misinformation. So it's going to be the TV channels. It's going to be the mainstream radios who are spreading misinformation completely. You know, they're really promoting vaccines and mRNA vaccination everywhere. You know,
and of which we have. And couldn't we do that? Well, I don't know. It's a supposition, and then we'll end it here. But couldn't we reach out to larger movements, even financially, in the United States, to bring in some active forces from the US to support our cause, to support us, even financially? Isn't there a way to create a bridge with the United States on this mRNA topic?
There are bridges being made, more or less. But in terms of effectiveness, I don't think it's really effective, you know. And it has to be the French who wake up, you know, because well, they are still in a stupor. I mean, people believe in getting vaccinated everywhere, you know. The so-called anti-vaxxers or conspiracy theorists, they are still very much in the minority, you know. I think it's time for people to wake up and hear. Because
I have reached out, we have tried to reach out to some politicians. I tried to reach out to Philippe de Villiers because I got his private cell phone number and I didn't want to, I suggested he get in touch with you, at least by sending him a message to raise this issue. I noticed that, I don't know if it's your opinion, but I noticed that, well, the politicians who could be potential candidates to be in dissent don't want to tackle this topic. They don't want to talk about it too much, you know?
Yes, there aren't many politicians, you know, who...
There's no backing on that side. No. Yes.
Yes. There's Nicolas Dupont-Aignan. There's... Yes. There's Florian Philippot. There's Virginie Geron.
Who invited you? Is that right? Yes,
There's Miller Brown too, well. But it's true that in the political sphere, generally, they want not to get too involved in these matters because, well, they want not to draw ire, I think, you know. So they want to remain quite neutral precisely on mRNA vaccination. There's such power behind it. There is such aggressive pushing too. There's enormous financial power, huge financial resources.
Yeah.
Enormous lobbying. And so, well, it's a crushing machine, you know. Yeah.
Okay, Jean-Marc. Well, listen, thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you, François, for the invitation. Yes. And then,
well, we might have the chance to see each other on other occasions. We'll see how things develop. Yes. And I will invite you if new things come up, if new arrangements appear. Well, you will be welcome, of course, to express yourself. Yes, thank you.
François, and thank you to the listeners. Thank you. See you soon.
See you soon.
Goodbye.